شو مسخرة. هلا طلع ولع الشارع كله. ابعد اطلع من هون.
مش صارخات. طبيب
ولك اشي مش طبيعي هون، اشي مش طبيعي. قلعت الدنيا.
Three months ago, flames turned the Jerusalem hills into an apocalyptic hellscape. Highway 1 became a death trap as terrified drivers abandoned their cars and fled on foot through choking black smoke. What Israeli officials called the largest fire in the country's history consumed over 5,000 acres in just 30 hours, forcing 10,000 people from their homes and bringing the nation to its knees. But tonight, we return to those same hills to uncover a story the world hasn't heard. How do you rebuild from ashes? How do communities heal when everything they knew is gone? And what we discovered will shock you. Because the real battle for Jerusalem's survival is just beginning. Where Highway 1 was completely shut down 3 months ago, where families fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs, the road is now open, but the scars run deeper than anyone imagined. The numbers tell only part of the story. 18 people arrested for suspected arson, $21 million in emergency aid approved, over 160 firefighting teams from 8 countries mobilized. But what the statistics don't capture is the human cost that's still unfolding today. A mother who lost her home in Ramat Raziel tells reporters, "We thought we'd be back in a few days. 3 months later, we're still living in temporary housing. The government promised help, but bureaucracy moves slower than wildfire." She's not alone. Of the 10,000 evacuated, nearly 2,000 families remain displaced. The $21 million in aid? Most of it is tied up in red tape, while families drain their savings on hotel rooms and rental properties. Our investigation reveals a recovery effort plagued by delays, disputes, and devastating setbacks that officials don't want you to know about. The temporary housing situation has become a nightmare. Families promised short-term accommodations are now facing their 4th month in cramped hotel rooms. Children are attending schools hours away from their temporary homes. Elderly residents, some evacuated from care facilities, are struggling with the constant upheaval. "My 8-year-old asks me every night when we're going home," says a father whose house in Givat Yaim was completely destroyed. "I don't know what to tell him anymore. The insurance company is fighting us on every claim. The government keeps saying soon, but soon isn't good enough when you're living out of suitcases." The $21 million emergency fund has become a bureaucratic maze. Families must navigate multiple agencies, provide extensive documentation, much of which was destroyed in the fire, and wait months for approval. Some have received as little as $500, while their losses exceed $200,000. A local council member doesn't mince words. "The system is broken. We have families who lost everything being asked to prove they owned items that are now ash. It's cruel, and it's failing our people when they need us most." But the human crisis is only half the story. The environmental recovery reveals an even more disturbing truth. An environmental expert from the Jewish National Fund reports that replanting efforts have failed in many areas. The soil is so damaged, so depleted, that nothing will grow. We're looking at decades of recovery, not years. Some areas may never return to their original state. The 3,000 acres of destroyed forest contained ecosystems that took centuries to develop. Rare plant species are gone forever. Wildlife corridors that connected Jerusalem to surrounding areas have been severed, creating isolated pockets that threaten biodiversity across the region. 3 months later, the criminal investigation has taken shocking turns that raise disturbing questions about how this disaster really began. Of the 18 people arrested on suspicion of arson, 12 have been released without charges. The remaining 6 face a legal battle that could drag on for years. But here's what's truly alarming. Investigators now believe this wasn't random vandalism. A security expert who has covered Israeli intelligence for decades explains the pattern of ignition points, the timing during national holidays, the coordination required. This has hallmarks of organized activity, whether it's domestic terrorism or foreign interference. We may never know the full truth. The implications are staggering. If this was coordinated, it means Israel's critical infrastructure is more vulnerable than anyone realized. The Jerusalem Hills aren't just scenic countryside, they're the buffer zone protecting Israel's capital from wildfire threats. But even if every arsonist is caught, experts warn the real threat is just beginning. A meteorologist shows climate projections that are terrifying. This fire season was just a preview. Rising temperatures, changing rainfall patterns, longer dry seasons. We're entering an era where fires like this will become routine, not exceptional. The Jerusalem Hills have experienced their driest period in recorded history. Rainfall is down 40% from historical averages. Summer temperatures are reaching record highs. The forest that took decades to grow back from previous fires is now a tinderbox, waiting for the next spark. What happened in Jerusalem 3 months ago isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a global pattern that's accelerating faster than anyone predicted. From California's megafires to Australia's Black Summer, from Greece's deadly blazes to Canada's record-breaking fire seasons, the Jerusalem fire fits a terrifying global trend. But Israel's unique challenges make recovery even more complex. Unlike other countries with vast rural areas, Israel's fires threaten dense urban populations within minutes. The Jerusalem fire came within kilometers of neighborhoods, housing hundreds of thousands of people. Next time, they might not be so lucky. Our investigation reveals that warnings about this exact scenario were ignored for years. A 2019 government report specifically identified the Jerusalem Hills as a critical fire risk zone, requiring immediate intervention. Recommendations included creating fire breaks, upgrading emergency response systems, and relocating vulnerable communities. 3 years later, when the fire struck, none of these measures had been implemented. We knew this was coming, admits a government official who spoke on condition of anonymity. But prevention doesn't win elections. Disaster response does. So we waited for the disaster. The true cost of this fire is still climbing. Beyond the immediate $21 million in aid, economists estimate the total economic impact will exceed $500 million. Tourism to the Jerusalem area has dropped 30%. Local businesses dependent on the destroyed communities have closed permanently. Property values in surrounding areas have plummeted as insurance companies reassess fire risks. But the hidden cost is even higher: the loss of confidence in government preparedness and response capabilities. 3 months after the flames were extinguished, the real fire, the one burning through communities, families, and faith in institutions, continues to rage. Where things stand today, 2,000 families still displaced, 60% of promised aid still tied up in bureaucracy, 0 homes fully rebuilt, environmental recovery not expected for decades, criminal investigations stalled with more questions than answers. But there are signs of hope. Community groups have formed to bypass government bureaucracy and help families directly. International environmental organizations are partnering with local groups on innovative restoration techniques. Some families are choosing to rebuild with fire-resistant materials and designs. Looking across the Jerusalem Hills today, landscapes shift from green recovery to black devastation. And one thing is clear: this story isn't over. It's a preview. Climate scientists predict fires like this will occur every 3 to 5 years instead of every few decades. Israel's emergency response systems, already strained by this single event, aren't prepared for that reality. The question isn't whether another massive fire will strike Jerusalem. it's when. And whether the lessons from these 3 months of struggle, bureaucracy, and resilience will be enough to save lives when that day comes. The recovery from Israel's largest wildfire continues. The next chapter of this story is being written right now in temporary housing, government offices, and the slowly healing hills themselves. What other stories of climate disaster recovery do you want us to investigate? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the stories that matter most.
תעשי וידאו.
לא, תסמך.
אני נוסע, תעשי וידאו.
יש וידאו, תעוף.
תראי מה זה, על הכביש.
יהודה, אם אתה לא טס מהר אני הורגת אותך.
כל מי שעל האוטובוס, יאללה, תרדו ותחשוב, יאללה.
בואי, طلع.
جوا السيارات كمان. والله جوا السيارات كمان.
الله أكبر.